September 3rd, 1944, 0834 hours. Supply depot outside Chartres, France. Captain Sarah McKinnon doesn't carry a gun into combat. She carries a clipboard, a calculator, and the weight of an entire armored division's survival on her shoulders. All right, listen up. Her voice cuts through the organized chaos of the supply depot, a sprawling collection of tents, trucks, and stacked pallets that stretches for half a mile along a former German airfield. 3rd Armored is pushing toward the Rhine. They're burning through fuel faster than we can truck it forward. I need every available tanker on the road in 30 minutes. 30 minutes, people, not 31. A young private can't be more than 20 raises his hand nervously. Ma'am, what about the ammo convoy? Colonel Briggs said. Colonel Briggs can wait 15 minutes, McKinnon interrupts. Without fuel, those Shermans are just expensive roadblocks. Without ammo, they can at least move. Priorities, private. Learn them. This is the war the folks back home don't see. The war that doesn't make it into the newsreels or the heroic newspaper dispatches. The war of supply lines, maintenance schedules, spare parts inventories, and fuel consumption rates. The Germans have Tigers and Panthers masterpieces of engineering that can destroy 3 Shermans before breakfast. What they don't have is enough of them. What they don't have is the fuel to run them. What they don't have is the spare parts to fix them when they break down. What they don't have is the unglamorous, unromantic, absolutely essential logistics train that keeps an army moving. The Americans? They have that in spades. McKinnon walks through the depot, her boots squelching in the mud dot around her. The American war machine operates with industrial efficiency. Mechanics are pulling engines from damaged Shermans and installing them in other tanks, cannibalizing the dead to keep the living fighting. Supply sergeants are organizing mountains of 75mm shells, sorting them by type: armor-piercing, high-explosive, white phosphorus. Fuel trucks are being loaded with thousands of gallons of gasoline, enough to keep an armored column moving for days. Ma'am? Sergeant Bill Thompson, a grizzled veteran who was maintaining trucks back when McKinnon was still in high school, approaches with a grease-stained manifest. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? The good kind. 3rd Armored just reported they knocked out 12 German tanks yesterday. Problem is, they went through 800 rounds of 75mm ammo doing it, and they're requesting immediate resupply. But 5th Armored is also requesting priority resupply, and we don't have enough trucks to handle both. McKinnon does the math in her head. How far behind schedule is 3rd Armored's advance? Not behind at all, ma'am. Actually ahead of schedule. Then they can wait 6 hours for resupply. Give priority to 5th Armored. They're facing heavier resistance, and they'll need every shell. Tell 3rd Armored to consolidate their remaining ammo and keep pushing. We'll get them resupplied by nightfall. Thompson nods, scribbling notes. Yes, ma'am. Also, we just received word from the beachhead. 42 new Shermans arrived yesterday. Should be here by tomorrow morning. 42 new Shermans. Replacement tanks for the ones destroyed, damaged, or simply worn out by the brutal pace of the advance across France. Back in Detroit and Pittsburgh, the factories are cranking them out 24 hours a day. A Sherman every hour, sometimes faster. The Germans? They're producing maybe 25 Tigers per month, if they're lucky, if the RF doesn't bomb the factory, if they can get the materials, if. This is the equation the German High Command doesn't want to admit. They re-fighting an enemy that can replace losses faster than they can inflict them. 12 for 2 hours. Forward maintenance area, 12 miles behind the front line. Master Sergeant Luis Hernandez wipes sweat and grease from his forehead, leaving a black smear across his skin. Around him, his maintenance crew swarms over a damaged Sherman like ants on a piece of candy. Murphy, that transmission isn't going to replace itself. Get your ass in gear. The Sherman, Lady Luck, according to the name painted on its turret, took a hit from a Panzer 2 days ago. The shaped charge warhead punched through the side armor, killed the driver and loader, and damaged the transmission. By German standards, the tank would be a write-off. Strip it for parts, bury the crew, move on. By American standards, it's a Tuesday. Transmission's out. Private Murphy yells from underneath the tank, passing it up now. 4 men muscle the damaged transmission out from under Lady Luck. It weighs over 400 pounds, and it's coated in oil, mud, and what might be blood. They drop it next to a growing pile of damaged parts track links, road wheels, a cracked periscope, a bent machine gun barrel. How long? Hernandez shouts to his crew chief. 6 hours if we work straight through, Sarge. Maybe 8 if we break for chow. No breaks. That crew needs their tank back by tonight. Hernandez points to 3 exhausted tankers sitting nearby, drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes. They're the survivors of Lady Luck's crew commander, gunner, and bow gunner. 2 of their buddies are in graves marked with white crosses back near the beachhead. The commander, a lieutenant whose name Hernandez can never remember, walks over. Sergeant, I heard you might have my girl ready tonight. That true? That's the plan, sir. New transmission, new tracks on the left side, patch welded over the hole in the armor. Won't be pretty, but she run. The lieutenant looks at Lady Luck with the expression of a man seeing an old friend in a hospital bed. Any word on replacement crew members? 2 new guys coming up from the replacement depot. Driver and a loader. Fresh off the boat, probably scared shitless. Definitely don't know what they're doing yet. Great. The lieutenant lights another cigarette. So I get to break in 2 cherries while we're pushing toward Germany. This keeps getting better. Hernandez understands the frustration, but he's seen this cycle play out 100 times. Green replacements arrive, terrified and incompetent. They either learn fast and survive, or they learn slow and die. The survivors become veterans. The veterans become casualties. More replacements arrive. It's brutal. It's impersonal. It's industrial warfare at its finest. Sir, can I give you some perspective? Hernandez doesn't wait for permission. My crew has repaired or rebuilt 47 Shermans since we landed in Normandy. 40-7. Some of them got hit again, and we fixed them a second time. Hell, there's 1 tank in 3rd Battalion Iron Hammer that we've rebuilt 3 times. The Germans, when they lose a Tiger, that's it. It's gone. Takes them months to build a new one, and by then, we've replaced 20 Shermans for every Tiger they knocked out. The lieutenant takes a long drag on his cigarette. You're saying quantity beats quality. I'm saying quantity is quality when you're fighting a war of attrition. Sir. The Germans built the best tanks in the world. Congratulations to them. But we built enough tanks to win the war. That's the only stat that matters. 1847 hours. Radio intercept station, former German bunker. Captain Thomas Lee adjusts his headphones, listening to German radio chatter. He doesn't speak perfect German, but he's gotten pretty good at recognizing certain words. Panzer, Kraftstoff, munition, tank, fuel, ammunition. The Germans talk about those three things constantly, and it's always the same story. Not enough. Got another one. Lee calls to his commanding officer. German Panzer Company requesting fuel resupply. Command is telling them they'll have to wait 48 hours. The tankers are pissed. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes walks over, chewing on an unlit cigar. 48 hours? Hell, our boys would mutiny if they had to wait 48 hours for fuel. Different armies, different logistics, sir. Barnes grunts. Let me see the intercept log. Lee hands over the clipboard. It's a catalog of German desperation. Tank units running out of fuel and abandoning their vehicles. Artillery batteries rationing ammunition. Infantry units requesting medical supplies that never arrive. Look at this one from yesterday. Lee points to an entry. German armor commander reporting that his Panther broke down, mechanical failure, and he doesn't have replacement parts. He's requesting permission to cannibalize another Panther for parts. Permission granted, I assume? Denied, sir. Higher command told him both tanks need to remain operational on paper for strategic planning purposes, even if one of them can't actually move. Barnes barks out a laugh. They're lying to themselves about their own combat strength. Jesus, that's desperate. It is desperate. The German army is bleeding out from 1,000 logistical cuts. Every tank destroyed can't be replaced. Every gallon of fuel burned is 1 gallon closer to empty. Every shell fired is 1 shell closer to their magazines running dry. Meanwhile, the Americans are drowning in supplies, mountains of ammunition, oceans of fuel. More tanks than they have crews to operate them. More spare parts than they have mechanics to install them. Lee remembers something his grandfather told him once, his grandfather who immigrated from China, who worked in the California shipyards during World War I. America doesn't fight wars with soldiers, the old man had said. America fights wars with factories. Truer words were never spoken. 2,134 hours. Officers briefing, Tent. Major General Ernest. Harmon stands in front of a map of Western Europe covered in colored pins and arrows. Blue pins for American positions, red pins for German positions, black pins for destroyed enemy armor. There are a lot of black pins. Gentlemen, I want you to understand something about the strategic situation. Harmon taps the map with his pointer. The German army is not losing because our tanks are better. They're losing because they can't sustain their operations. Intelligence estimates they have fewer than 300 operational Tigers and Panthers on the entire Western Front. That sounds like a lot until you realize we're facing them with over 3,000 Shermans. He lets that sink in. 300 versus 3,000, 10-to-1 odds. But here's the kicker, Harmon continues. Every week, we're adding more Shermans to that total. Ships arriving from America every day. Factories working overtime. Meanwhile, the Germans are losing tanks faster than they can replace them. Last month, they lost an estimated 140 heavy tanks. They produced maybe 30. A colonel in the back raises his hand. Sir, if the Germans are so outnumbered, why is this taking so long? Why aren't we in Berlin already? Because, Colonel, the Germans are still the most tactically proficient army in the world. Their tank crews are experienced. Their commanders are skilled, and they're fighting on home turf with short supply lines. If this was a fair fight, tank for tank, gun for gun, we'd lose. Harmon smiles grimly. But we're Americans. We don't fight fair. We fight smart. We use our industrial capacity, our logistics network, and our numerical superiority to overwhelm them. For every battle they win tactically, we win strategically by simply showing up with more tanks, more fuel, more ammunition, and more determination than they can match. He looks around the tent at the assembled officers. The Germans laugh at our Shermans. They call them Ronsons and Tommy Cookers. They think their Tigers and Panthers prove German superiority. And you know what? Let them laugh. Let them feel superior while they're running out of fuel, while their factories are being bombed into rubble, while their supply lines collapse, and while we roll over them with wave after wave of inferior American steel. Harmon taps the map one final time. Logistics wins wars, gentlemen, not bravery, not superior engineering, not tactical brilliance. Logistics. The army that can keep its tanks fueled, its guns loaded, and its soldiers fed is the army that wins. And that army is us. The briefing ends. The officers file out, returning to their units, their tanks, their endless advance toward the Rhine. Behind them, in a depot outside Chartres, Captain McKinnon is coordinating tomorrow's supply convoys. In a maintenance area, Sergeant Hernandez is installing a new transmission in Lady Luck in a factory in Detroit. Workers are welding together another Sherman. The German army is dying not from a single killing blow, but from 10,000 cuts, each one inflicted by the unglamorous, relentless machinery of American industrial warfare. And there's nothing the Tigers and Panthers can do to stop it. December 16, 1944, 0530 hours. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The world explodes. Staff Sergeant Danny Reeves jerks awake inside his Sherman as the first German artillery shells slam into the snow-covered forest. For 3 seconds, he doesn't understand what's happening. They're in a quiet sector. Everyone said so. The Ardennes is where units come to rest and refit after the brutal fighting in Hurtgen Forest. Nobody attacks through the Ardennes in winter. Nobody except the Germans. What the hell? Corporal Jimmy Price, the gunner, scrambles for his station. Outside, the pre-dawn darkness is lit up by orange flashes. Trees explode into splinters. Men are screaming. Battle stations now, Reeves bellows into the intercom. His crew good men. Veterans of Normandy and the race across France move with practiced speed despite their terror. Driver, start the engine. Radio, get me battalion command. The radio crackles with chaos. Multiple units calling in artillery strikes. Someone screaming about Tiger tanks. Another voice reporting German infantry in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands, pouring out of the forest. This isn't a raid. This isn't a spoiling attack. This is an offensive. A massive, desperate, all-or-nothing German offensive. Lieutenant Peter Walsh's voice cuts through the radio static. All tanks, this is Walrus 6. We are under attack by elements of what appears to be an entire Panzer army. Fall back to secondary positions. Repeat. Fall back and consolidate. This is not a drill. This is not a probe. The Krauts are coming with everything they've got. Reeves peers through his periscope. Through the snow and smoke, he can see them, dark shapes moving through the trees. German infantry in winter camouflage, nearly invisible against the snow. Behind them, larger shapes, tanks, not Panzer IVs. Not even Panthers, Tigers, King Tigers, the newest, heaviest, most dangerous tanks the Germans have ever built. Oh, Jesus, Price whispers. How many you think they got? Too many. Reeves keys the radio. Able 4 to Walrus 6. I count at least 8 heavy tanks, type Tiger or King Tiger, advancing on our position. Request immediate. A tree 50 yards to their left explodes, hit by an 88mm shell. The Germans have spotted them. Driver, reverse. Get us behind that ridge now. The Sherman lurches backward, tracks churning through the snow. They make it behind cover just as another German shell screams past, missing by inches. Around them, the American defense is collapsing. Not from cowardice, from shock and overwhelming force. Units that have been resting for weeks are suddenly facing the full fury of a German army that's not supposed to exist anymore. An army everyone thought was beaten, broken, just waiting for the final push to Berlin. The Germans have other ideas. 647 hours. Defensive position near Saint-Vith. By dawn, the scope of the disaster is becoming clear. The Germans have punched a massive hole in the American lines, and they're pouring through it tanks, trucks, half-tracks, infantry. Thousands of vehicles. Tens of thousands of men. It's the biggest German offensive on the Western Front since D-Day, and they're heading straight for the fuel depots. Reeves understands immediately. This isn't about territory. This isn't about killing Americans. This is about fuel. The German tanks are running on fumes, operating on the last dregs of their strategic reserves. If they can capture American fuel dumps, and the Americans have massive fuel dumps all over Belgium, they can keep this offensive rolling all the way to Antwerp. If they fail, they're dead. The entire German army in the West is committing suicide by going all in on this attack. Able Company, form up on me. Lieutenant Walsh's Sherman. War Daddy rolls into position at a crossroads. We're going to slow them down. Maybe we can't stop them, but we can damn sure make them pay for every inch. 12 Shermans line up in defensive positions. It's textbook tank warfare, hull-down positions, interlocking fields of fire, infantry support on the flanks. But everyone knows the math. 12 Shermans versus what intelligence is now reporting as 3 Panzer divisions, including the 1st SS Panzer Division. Reeves does a quick inventory. 24 rounds of 75mm armor-piercing. 18 rounds of high explosive. 3 belts of .30 caliber for the machine guns. 1 tank. 5 men against the entire German army. Could be worse, Price mutters. How? Could be raining. As if on cue, sleep begins to fall. 821 hours. The same crossroads. The German attack comes methodically, professionally. No wild charges. No heroic gestures. Just cold, calculated pressure from 3 directions simultaneously. Infantry 1st German soldiers in winter white, using the terrain expertly. Reeves watches them through his periscope, grudgingly impressed. These aren't the desperate kids Germany's been throwing at them for months. These are veterans, pulled from the Eastern Front, men who've been fighting the Russians for years. Machine guns engage infantry at 400 yards. The Sherman's bow machine gun chatters. German soldiers drop into the snow. Others keep coming. Always more of them. Then the tanks arrive. Contact, Panzer IVs, 3 of them, 11 o'clock. Price doesn't need instructions. The Sherman's gun roars. The 1st German tank staggers, smoke pouring from its turret. The other 2 spread out, looking for cover, firing on the move. It's chaos. Professional, organized chaos. The Germans probe the American defenses, looking for weak points. When they find a gap, they exploit it ruthlessly. When they hit resistance, they pin it down with artillery and maneuver around it. Reeves recognizes the tactics. This is Blitzkrieg, the lightning war that conquered Poland, France, the Low Countries. The Germans are trying to do it one more time. Able 4, this is War Daddy. We've got King Tigers moving up the main road. At least 4 of them. All units prepare to. Walsh's transmission cuts off as his Sherman takes a direct hit. The turret flies off like a bottle cap. Fire and smoke pour from the hull. No, no, no. Price is frozen, staring at the burning wreck of their platoon leader's tank. Snap out of it. Reeves slaps the back of Price's helmet. We can mourn later. Right now we fight. Target that King Tiger. Center mass. Fire when ready. The 75mm shell bounces off the King Tiger's frontal armor like a pebble off a castle wall. The German tank doesn't even slow down. Its massive 88mm gun swivels toward them with mechanical precision. Reverse, reverse now. They back behind, cover half a second before the King Tiger fires. The shell hits the stone wall they were hiding behind, reducing it to gravel. This is the nightmare scenario. The Germans have committed their strategic reserve, their last, best tanks and their most experienced crews, and they're not just attacking. They're winning. 11:34 hours. Fallback position 2 miles from the original line. By mid-morning, the American defense has stabilized. Not because they've stopped the Germans, but because the Germans have outrun their supply lines. Those magnificent Tigers and King Tigers are guzzling fuel at an alarming rate, and the German supply trucks are getting picked off by American artillery and air attacks. Reeves listens to the radio chatter, piecing together the bigger picture. The German offensive has punched deep into American lines, maybe 30 miles in some places. They've surrounded entire American units. They've captured supplies, equipment, even some fuel dumps. But they haven't broken through to the major depots. And now the weather is starting to clear, which means the American Air Force is about to enter the fight. Able 4, this is Crusher 6. A new voice on the radio, someone from division headquarters. We're organizing a counterattack. Every available Sherman is being pulled from across the front. You're going to have company soon. A lot of company. How much company? Reeves asks. Try 600 tanks. 600 tanks. The number is staggering. The Germans have committed everything to this offensive, maybe 400 tanks total, including their precious Tigers and King Tigers. The Americans are about to hit them with 600 SHERMANS. This is the moment. This is where the war of production, the war of logistics, the war of American industrial might finally proves its worth. December 19th, 1944, 14:02 hours. Counterattack near Bastogne. 3 days later, Reeves is part of the largest American armored formation assembled since D-Day. Hundreds of Shermans, stretching as far as he can see, rolling forward in a line that must be miles wide. The Germans fought brilliantly. They punched deep. They caused chaos. They captured supplies and killed thousands of Americans, but they didn't capture the fuel depots. And now they're stuck immobilized by lack of fuel, pounded by American artillery, strafed by American fighters. And now the Shermans are coming. Contact front. Multiple German tanks, hold down positions. Here we go again. But this time it's different. When a Sherman goes down, and several do, burning orange against the white snow, 3 more roll forward to take its place. When the Germans knock out 5 Shermans, 10 more appear over the ridge behind them. They refacing an enemy that can absorb losses that would cripple any other army and just keep coming. Reeves, Sherman, Brooklyn brawler, takes a hit from a Panther. The shell penetrates the turret, killing Price instantly and wounding the loader. Reeves, bleeding from shrapnel in his shoulder, keeps fighting. Another Sherman pulls up beside them, its crew helping evacuate the wounded. "Can you fight?" a sergeant asks Reeves. "Yeah, then get in my tank." "We need every man." Reeves climbs into the new Sherman. He doesn't even catch its name and takes over the gunner's position. The previous gunner is dead, slumped in his seat. Reeves pushes the body aside. No time for ceremony. No time for respect. Just time to keep fighting. By nightfall, the German offensive has stalled completely. Out of fuel, out of ammunition, out of options, German tank crews are abandoning their vehicles and retreating on foot. The mighty King Tigers, those engineering marvels that were supposed to win the war, sit frozen and useless, abandoned by crews who have nothing left to fight with. The American Shermans keep rolling forward. December 24th, 1944, Christmas Eve, Supply Depot near Liege. Captain McKinnon surveys the organized chaos of the supply depot. 8 days ago, the Germans launched their surprise offensive. 8 days of desperate fighting, massive casualties, and genuine fear that the Germans might actually pull it off. But they didn't, because while the Germans were fighting with their last reserves, burning their last fuel, firing their last ammunition, the American supply lines kept operating, kept delivering, kept ensuring that every Sherman that got knocked out was replaced, every casualty was reinforced, every unit that ran low on ammo got resupplied. "Ma'am," Sergeant Thompson approaches with a status report. "Final tally from the Bulge. We lost approximately 700 Shermans, 700 tanks, 700 crews. Thousands of American boys who won't see home. And the Germans?" Intelligence estimates they lost about 600 tanks total, maybe half their remaining. Armor on the Western Front. Panthers, Tigers, King Tigers. All of it. And here's the kicker. They're not getting replacements. Their factories are bombed out. Their supply lines are cut. That's it for them. McKinnon nods slowly. "And us? We've got 400 replacement Shermans arriving by January 1st. Another 600 by the end of the month. There it is. The math that wins wars. The Americans lost more tanks but can replace them all within weeks. The Germans lost fewer tanks but can't replace any of them. The Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last desperate gamble, has failed. Not because German tanks weren't good enough. Not because German soldiers weren't brave enough. Because Germany couldn't match American production, American logistics, and American determination. The war isn't over yet. There's still a long, bloody road to Berlin. But the outcome is no longer in doubt. March 7th, 1945. 15:23 hours. The Ludendorff Bridge, Remagen, Germany. First Lieutenant Karl Timmerman can't believe what he's seeing. The bridge is still standing. For weeks, American forces have been racing toward the Rhine River, the last natural barrier between the Allied armies and the heart of Germany. Everyone expected the Germans to blow every bridge, to force the Americans into a costly river crossing under fire. But here, at the small town of Remagen, the Ludendorff Bridge stands intact, stretching across the gray waters of the Rhine like a gift from God. "Get tanks across that bridge now," Timmerman screams into his radio, "before the Krauts blow it." Staff Sergeant Danny Reeves, shoulders still healing from the bulge, but refusing to sit out the final push-gun's Brooklyn Brawler's engine. The Sherman lurches forward, tracks clanking on the cobblestones as it races toward the bridge. Around him, German demolition charges are detonating. The Germans are trying desperately to drop the bridge, but something's wrong with their explosives. The charges go off, but the bridge stays up damaged, smoking, but still standing. "Come on, baby, come on," Reeves urges his driver. Faster. The Sherman rolls onto the bridge. Behind them, 3 more Shermans follow. German small arms fire pings off their armor desperate German defenders on the far side, shooting at targets they can't stop. The bridge sways under the weight of the tanks. Steel groans. Concrete cracks. For a terrifying moment, Reeves thinks the whole structure is going to collapse and drop them into the freezing Rhine. But it holds. Brooklyn Brawler reaches the eastern bank, the first American tank on German soil east of the Rhine. Within hours, an entire armored division will follow. Within days, the Rhine has been crossed in multiple locations. The last barrier is gone. Germany is finished. March 23, 1945, 0219 hours. Outside Darmstadt, Germany, the war has changed. The Americans are no longer fighting defensive battles or slugging through hedgerows. They're racing to grab as much of Germany as possible before the Russians arrive from the east. Captain Thomas Rodriguez commands a company of Shermans from the 3rd Armored Division, and right now, his biggest problem isn't German tanks. It's deciding which route to take through a country that's collapsing into chaos. "Sir, we just got intel from a recon unit." Lieutenant Chen, his XO, spreads a map across the hood of a jeep. "There's a Panzer unit dug in at this crossroads, maybe a dozen tanks, including at least 2 Tigers. They're blocking the main road to Frankfurt." Rodriguez studies the map. "What about alternate routes?" "We could swing north, add 12 hours to our advance. Or we could go through them. 6 months ago, hell, even 3 months ago, the answer would have been obvious. You don't charge headlong into a prepared German defensive position with Tigers. You call in artillery, you wait for air support, you maneuver around. But this isn't 6 months ago. This is March 1945. The German army is running out of everything: fuel, ammunition, food, hope. And the Americans? The Americans have more of everything than they know what to do with. We go through them, Rodriguez decides. Fast and hard. Overwhelm them before they can coordinate a defense. "Sir, that's exactly what we're going to do, Lieutenant. Get every tank in the company ready to move. We're going to hit them with 40 Sherman simultaneously from 3 directions. We're not going to give them time to think, time to aim, time to do anything except die or surrender. This is the new American doctrine. Not careful, methodical advances. Not waiting for perfect conditions. Just relentless, overwhelming pressure. Because for every Sherman the Germans knock out, there are 3 more behind it. And 3 more behind those. And 3 more after that. The Germans can't win a war of attrition, and they know it. 3:47 hours. The crossroads near Darmstadt. The attack goes exactly as Rodriguez planned. 40 Shermans roll toward the German position in the pre-dawn darkness, splitting into 3 columns. The Germans spot them at 400 yards and open fire. 2 Shermans brew up immediately direct hits from Tigers that can kill at a mile, but the other 38 keep coming. The German tankers, veterans of years of war, try to fall back to alternate positions, but they're low on fuel. Their engines are worn out. Their optics are damaged. And there are just too many American tanks coming from too many directions. Reeves, commanding Brooklyn Brawler in the center column, sees a Panther trying to reverse into cover. His gunner, a replacement from Ohio named Jackson, puts a 75mm shell into the Panther's side. The German tank shudders and stops, crew bailing out. Target neutralized. Traversing right. Another German tank, a Panzer IV, old and battered but still fighting, takes a hit from 3 different Shermans simultaneously. It explodes, turret flipping end over end. The Tigers put up a fierce fight. One of them knocks out 4 Shermans before Jackson manages to get a lucky shot through a vision port. The second Tiger fights until it runs out of ammunition, then surrenders, its crew climbing out with their hands up. The battle lasts 23 minutes. When it's over, 12 German tanks are destroyed or captured. 8 Shermans are knocked out. The Americans have lost maybe 40 men. 6 months ago, this would have been considered a costly victory. Today, it's just another mile marker on the road to Berlin. All units regroup and prepare to continue the advance. Rodriguez sounds almost bored on the radio. Maintenance crews, get those damaged tanks to the rear. Everyone else, we're moving out in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Not 15 hours. Not 15 days. The Americans don't pause anymore. Don't consolidate. Don't wait for supplies to catch up. They just keep rolling forward. April 4th, 1945, 11:34 hours. Outskirts of Nuremberg. Sergeant Luis Hernandez has stopped counting how many Shermans his maintenance crew has repaired. Stopped counting how many broken transmissions they've replaced, how many shot-up engines they've rebuilt, how many damaged tanks they've cannibalized for parts. The numbers don't matter anymore. What matters is keeping the advance moving. Sarge. Private Murphy waves from underneath a Sherman. This one's got a cracked engine block. Can't fix it in the field. Then strip it for parts and mark it for recovery. We'll send it back to a depot. But Sarge, the depot's like 80 miles behind us now. Then it's their problem, not ours. We fix what we can fix and keep moving. That's the job. Hernandez looks at the endless column of American armor stretching back toward the Rhine. Thousands of vehicles, Shermans, tank destroyers, half-tracks, trucks, jeeps. The entire American war machine grinding forward relentlessly. And somewhere behind them, even more tanks are arriving from the factories back home. Even more supplies are piling up at the depots. Even more replacement crews are training to take the place of casualties. The Germans fought brilliantly. Their tanks were better. Their tactics were sound. Their soldiers were brave, but they were fighting an enemy that could absorb losses that would have destroyed any other army and just keep coming. An enemy backed by factories that never stopped producing. An enemy with supply lines that stretched across an ocean and never broke. "Hey, Sarge," Murphy calls out. "Check this out." Hernandez walks over. Murphy is pointing at a destroyed German tank, a King Tiger, the biggest, baddest tank Germany ever produced. Its armor is over 7 inches thick on the front. Its 88mm gun can kill any Allied tank at ridiculous ranges. And it's sitting abandoned by the side of the road, out of fuel, out of ammunition, left behind by a crew that had no choice but to walk home. "That's a King Tiger," Murphy says, awe in his voice. "Those things are supposed to be unstoppable. Nothing's unstoppable when it runs out of gas," Hernandez replies. Remember that, kid. The Germans built the best tanks in the world. But we built enough tanks to win the war. That's the only stat that matters. April 12th, 1945.1847 hours. American Field Headquarters, somewhere in central Germany. Major General Ernest Harman stands in front of a map covered in blue arrows, all of them pointing east. The German front has collapsed, not slowly, not gradually, but catastrophically. Entire German armies are surrendering. Cities are falling without a fight. The Third Reich is dying. Gentlemen, I want to share some numbers with you. Harman addresses his assembled officers. Since D-Day, we have lost approximately 2,800 Shermans on the Western Front. The room goes quiet. That's nearly 3,000 tanks. Nearly 15,000 American tankers killed or wounded. The Germans, Harman continues, have lost approximately 3,200 tanks total: Panthers, Tigers, King Tigers, Panzer IVs, everything they had. A colonel raises his hand. Sir, those numbers are almost even. How is that a victory for us? Harman smiles grimly. Because, Colonel, during that same period, we delivered over 6,000 replacement Shermans to Europe. 6,000. The Germans lost 3,000 tanks and couldn't replace them. We lost nearly 3,000 tanks and replaced them twice over, plus had enough left over to expand our armored forces. He taps the map. That's why we're racing toward Berlin while the Germans are surrendering by the thousands. Not because our tanks were better, not because our tactics were superior, but because we could sustain losses that would have crippled them. Lieutenant Chen stands. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. I've been thinking about something. The German tankers we've captured, they're not cowards. They're not incompetent. Some of them are the best tank crews in the world, but they look defeated. Not just militarily, but psychologically. Like they've realized something. What have they realized, Lieutenant? That it doesn't matter how good they are. That they could knock out 10 Shermans and we'd send 20 more. That they could win every tactical engagement and still lose the strategic war. That we're not trying to outfight them, we're trying to outlast them. Harman nods slowly. The Germans spent the 1930s building the perfect army. The perfect tanks, the perfect tactics, the perfect training. And for a while, it worked. They conquered most of Europe with it. But they forgot one fundamental rule of modern warfare. In an industrial age, wars are won in factories, not just on battlefields. He walks to the map, tracing the blue arrows with his finger. Every Sherman we lost was replaced within weeks. Every casualty was filled by a trained replacement. Every gallon of fuel burned was replaced by 10 more. The Germans? They're fighting with the scraps of an army that used to be great. Veteran crews and broken-down tanks with no fuel and no ammunition. The Sherman wasn't the best tank of World War II. Harman says quietly, but it was good enough. And we had enough of them. That's what the Germans never understood. They were so focused on building the perfect weapon that they forgot wars aren't won by perfection. They're won by persistence, production, and the will to keep fighting when any sane person would quit. April 30th, 1945. Location classified. American Forward Command Post. The radio transmission comes in at 2,314 hours. All units, all units. Be advised, Führer Adolf Hitler is confirmed dead in Berlin. Soviet forces have captured the Reichstag. The German High Command is preparing to surrender. Repeat, The war in Europe is nearly over. Reeves, sitting on the deck of Brooklyn Brawler with a cup of coffee going cold in his hands, doesn't feel much of anything. Not joy, not relief, just exhaustion. He thinks about all the Shermans he's seen burn, all the crews he's watched die, all the friends he buried in hasty graves across France, Belgium, and Germany. The Sherman wasn't a glamorous tank. It wasn't the subject of propaganda posters celebrating German engineering excellence. Nobody wrote poems about its technical specifications, but it showed up every day, in every weather condition, in every terrain, with crews who learned on the job, mechanics who kept them running with baling wire and determination, and a logistics network that never, ever stopped delivering. The Germans laughed at the Sherman. Called it a death trap, a Ronson, a Tommy Cooker. And then the Shermans buried them under sheer weight of numbers, persistence, and the unstoppable industrial might of a nation that refused to lose. Rodriguez walks over, offering Reeves a fresh cup of coffee. Heard the news? Yeah, we did it. We actually did it. Reeves takes the coffee, warming his hands on the cup. You know what the craziest part is? The Germans were right. Their tanks were better. Their guns were more powerful. Their armor was thicker, on paper. They should have won every engagement. But they didn't. No, they didn't. Because war isn't fought on paper. It's fought with supply lines and replacement parts and factory workers back in Detroit who never stopped building tanks. The Germans built masterpieces. We built workhorses. And the workhorses won. Somewhere in the darkness, another convoy of supply trucks rumbles past. Even now, with the war nearly over, the American logistics machine keeps running, keeps delivering, keeps proving that wars are won not by the army with the best weapons, but by the army that can keep its weapons fighting. The M4 Sherman, reliable, adaptable, numerous, wasn't the tank that won World War II because it was the best. It was the tank that won World War II because it was good enough, and there were enough of them to overwhelm any enemy, no matter how technologically superior. The Germans laughed at the Sherman, and the Sherman laughed last. End.